Hi everyone, this is Kim.
And my name is also Kim.
And so today is our first Hangout that we're going to do together, which I find pretty exciting to not, be a host by myself. It's something that we decided to try, and this will be sort of our trial run for today. So, Kim, how about you share the topic that we're going to be discussing for today?
Okay, so the topic we're going to be doing today is music in the context of the emotional experience that music gives us. Specifically for me, in this context, it's pop music, popular music that you hear on the radio over and over again. I've never been one to really be that interested in music. Like, I would never really play it on my own, or I never really got into music so much. So for me, like, I had an experience with music that was interesting, and this is what I want to talk about today, is the emotional effect that music can have on you, how it can influence or perpetuate an emotional experience within yourself.
Cool. Yeah, I found that a very interesting topic, also because I never really looked at it like in my process of kind of investigating myself in my mind. It's like music and my relationship to it, I've never specifically looked at. So if you're bringing up this topic, it also kind of pushed me to look into it and to open up some dimensions that we'll be discussing. So what might be the first point that we could look at?
Okay, well, I can just go into a little bit more of how it opened up for me. Because for me, I found myself, I was after a long-term relationship, and I had just left the relationship. And for the first time, I noticed myself being drawn to a specific kind of music. And it's a kind of music that I had never really been interested in before. So, being that I'm walking this process, so I am doing self-investigation, asking myself, why am I doing certain things? Why are certain things influencing me? And the draw was quite strong. It's like I felt myself wanting to like listen to the same song over and over again. So I was like, what is this? And it was like a sad song. I think it was like a Rihanna song called Stay. And then there was like a couple other ones that types of music that I was a bit surprised to find myself drawn to. And when I looked at it and investigated it, I saw that the music was like really expressing what I was feeling in that moment. And it was actually like, I saw, okay, I have a choice here. I can sit here in my room and listen to this song over and over and like really indulge in this emotional experience. And it almost like, even though it was sad and like lonely, like one of the lyrics in the song is like, I want you to hold on because I need this hole gone. And I was like so relating to that, and I could see myself, like I saw I had like kind of two choices. One, I could indulge in it and I can really go and see where that music would take me and how that would influence my life, my actions, how I walk my days. Or I could kind of stand up from within that emotional experience and make a correction. And so the 2 points, one is that I found that the music, because then I was observing myself from there on out to see if this happened more than I was aware of. And I saw that it is happening to me, where whatever songs I'm drawn to is like the emotional experience I'm feeling at the time. And so I could kind of identify what emotions I was in based on the songs I was drawn to. And when you can do that, when I found I could do that, I can then also be able to define it, put it into words, kind of really look at the mechanics of it, how it's affecting me, and then make a correction from that, from being able to identify it, be able to then I also identify the solution for myself.
The solution being?
Well, like, let's say, for example, for me, that specific the first experience where it was like lonely, alone, isolated, feeling like there's something missing in my life because I had been in a relationship, which was a big part of my life. And now that I was out of it, I did feel like a hole, and I felt alone. I felt like I wanted somebody. So my correction was to kind of create a new life, to fill that hole for myself with what I had available to me at the time, whether it was family, friends, myself, like self-investigation, getting to know me, creating a self-intimacy because I had an intimacy with someone else that was now gone. Instead of just staying alone in my apartment, because I ended up moving into apartment by myself, I left the apartment. I would go out. I would seek activities or, just social events so that I could basically create a new life for myself that was going to be different than the one I had lived before. And so at that time, that was the solution I was able to walk, based on identifying certain things that I didn't necessarily see, like wasn't so obvious for me until I looked at, okay, like why am I relating to this music so much?
That's really cool. So like you actually looked at the specific lyrics that you found yourself specifically drawn to, or
yeah,
that
it was the lyrics and it was the general mood of the song, because
yeah.
it's not like I could relate to like every single thing that she was saying, but I remember some of the lyrics would stand out. Yeah. And it would like create a reaction in me, like a draw, and I was like, oh, like I'm feeling that. It's like I thought to myself, maybe, well, yeah, it is what artists and musicians are able to do, is to basically sing in certain tones and say the right words that resonate with us, because it's like we're feeling the same thing, and they do that well.
Yeah, it's true. Like, because something that's like typical to today's music especially is that I often find that the lyrics are usually very much the same, especially if it's for instance, a song that's supposed to be really happy. It's about happiness, or a song that's about sadness, or a song that's about, well, most of them are about relationships, about love, either coming together or attraction or falling apart, that the lyrics are very similar, that they always like use specific phrases or use specific kind of keywords. And I always thought, like, why would you do that? Why would you just regurgitate the same thing over and over and over again? But it kind of makes sense from that perspective that actually these keywords or like key phrases that they use is almost like from my perspective, like the base programming of the emotion and how it exists in our kind of collective consciousness.
Yeah.
It's like I suppose the coding that would work for each and every one of us to spark or generate these specific types of emotions.
Yeah, totally.
But then, the question becomes like, what was first? The chicken or the egg? What was first, the music or the programming? Well, probably the programming.
Yeah, and like so pop music, I work at a job where I'm at a desk and I have a colleague who has a radio on all day long. That's 8 hours a day that I'm listening to the radio, and I'm hearing what people are listening to. And it's funny because if you walk around, you hear everybody listening to the same or similar radio station. So it's like everybody's like hearing the same music all the time, like constant impulsing. And I was also able to kind of notice the trends and the themes, like you're talking about, that base programming of emotions and feelings that we're able to relate to. And so since I started my investigation with music, I kind of make a game out of it now, where I will hear a song and I'll be like, okay, what does that resonate with me? And but the thing is that if you don't investigate it, like what I saw when I had my initial experience, is that you can like get really lost in this emotional experience with this music that can be quite disempowering in many ways. So like for me, with the sadness and the isolation, I just wanted to be alone and stay sad. And it was like I could feel my mind like enjoying that and getting fed by the emotional experience. And but it's something that would have been quite destructive in my life if I had let it go on. Mm-hmm. Another one, there's a song that it talks about, it's like a happy kind of more upbeat song. And it talks about, my rent was due a week ago. I work my ass off. I don't play enough. So like, just let me get into the club. And I don't know, it's like dance my problems away and stuff. And it's not the first song I've heard with this theme of like, my life is full of problems. Let me go get drunk and go to the club and just forget about the world and forget about everything. And it reminded me of a time in my life before I was walking any kind of self-investigative process where I had that attitude too, where it's like, you know, at a time where you really need to be looking at and like dealing with your problems that could accumulate into bigger and bigger problems, you have this music playing that's just saying like, forget about it, just go to the club, drink, get drunk, you know, like.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, when I was a teenager, you know, that this music could be quite dangerous in that I would listen to it, you know, maybe even subconsciously, just get that feeling of like excitement and like escape. And because the problems, you know, the rent, the bills, they seem so unenjoyable. Whereas the music is like, you know, forget about that. Do this instead.
Yeah. And also, that's a point that I noticed as well as I was looking into it, like that music has that ability to make emotions feel like feelings. So like that experience of my life is going to hell and I actually feel depressed and, you know, I'm actually quite stressed out and I'm actually kind of dissatisfied. Music can actually, you know, through using words and melodies and stuff, can create this kind of atmosphere around that experience and make it a feeling. Like I've had so many times in my life where I would go into an experience of depression or gloominess or, you know, actually experiences wherein we would call emotions, you know, experiences of not quite feeling that great about myself. But then just because I listened to certain music that accessed that gloominess experience, that kind of melancholy, nostalgia kind of feel to it, it made it feel good. It made me feel like I wanted to indulge more in it, even though it wasn't necessarily very supportive for me, even though it was kind of disempowering for me.
So did you find in those moments you wanted to listen to like gloomy music, or did you want to listen to like the upbeat music that makes like picks you up?
No, it was like I wanted to listen to the gloomy music to just be able
Yeah.
to, which is kind of weird looking at it because it's like gloominess is an emotion. You know, it's not supposed to be something that you'd want to indulge in, but because of the music, it kind of made it feel good at the same time.
Yeah, it's almost like a pity party. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, like
And
you
also,
just feel maybe less alone or whatever because it's like someone else is also expressing the same thing. It like validates it and justifies it.
yeah. And also like other emotions like anger. There's a lot of songs like and genres out there that specifically access the emotional experience of aggression, of anger, which isn't necessarily a very pleasant emotion, but because of the music, it somehow creates an atmosphere around it that makes it feel good, you know, that makes you feel like it's giving you energy or something.
Yeah, like it wants to come out and be expressed instead of be investigated or be, you know, which is cool. What were you going to say?
Or it creates like an identity around it, I suppose. You know, like because of the lyrics and the expressions within the music, it like makes it something more, makes the emotion within it something like an identity.
Yeah.
Which
Oh, for
is,
sure. Yeah, because you can have genres that have entire styles that go along with it where you can everybody who is into that type of music would dress a certain way, would act a certain way, and then you're being defined by your emotional experience or your feeling experience.
yeah. Yeah, so definitely like one dimension of music is that it tries to or attempts to kind of fuel or feed or support emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I noticed when I was listening to the radio at work, I wasn't always consciously listening to the radio. It was just kind of playing in the background, and I would find myself getting agitated or excited, you know, and then my legs would start to like, you know, like my legs are like jittering and eventually I had to ask the woman to just turn it off and give me a break, because I just found that the music was like impulsing stuff in me, that, you know, it was affecting my body. It was like affecting me physically to be listening to this music.
What kind of music was it? Do you remember?
Well, it was whatever is popular at the moment, top 10. I remember, like, Justin Bieber, Selena Gomez, whoever is popular, you know, a couple months ago. And the songs play over and over and over, the same songs for months.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, how did you find that your body was reacting to it?
Like I was getting, like, it depends on what the music was. It would be anxious, you know, when your legs are like going like up and down, and then I would start to like become aware of the music all of a sudden, and see that, like, let's say it was like a really upbeat song, or like a song about problems or something like that. It's like I would start thinking about those emotions in myself, and then connecting it to things in my life, and like reacting to that.
So you noticed the physical experience or expression first, and then you noticed the music.
Yeah, like I would be like uncomfortable in my body, and like feeling like I need to move around or whatnot, and then I would become aware of the music, and I would be like, oh, it's the music. Like,
That's interesting.
yeah. And that might be why I never really got into music, because I found that it does like affect me. Like I'm maybe a type of person who reacts more emotionally or with feelings to music, where it's like it's just like too much for me. Like, I don't need that influencing me. I just, you know, if I want to remain stable, I don't want to be listening to like this emotional music that's like drawing me into these emotions.
Yeah, because like I think that probably at that moment you were already in like maybe a stressed state or some kind of agitated state inside of yourself, and then the music would have in a way, you know, played into that or connected to that, and then created
Totally.
that.
Yeah, that totally could be, because there is even some music, Biggie Smalls, I was like, I can't listen to this at work, because it gets me so excited that I can't focus on my job. So like, even though I enjoy the music, I had to turn it off and be like, okay, when I'm at work, like, I cannot listen to this style of music at all.
Because like I have moments where I can listen to like heavy metal music and the most kind of droning music imaginable, while not being phased at all, and still being able to like focus on whatever it is that I'm doing and not going into any reactions. But then there are other moments where I would just go like, please shut it off, and like go into this annoyance experience. So yeah, it looks like the determining factor for how you experience the music coming in is mostly like, are you already in a state of emotions, or are you already actually stable inside of yourself?
Yeah, so that's a really cool indicator then,
Yeah.
where you can see how the music is affecting you, and then look at yourself, your life, your experiences, what's going on with you already, to see what exactly it is that's being triggered that you're not looking at.
Yeah, because like very, very easily people tend to blame music. Like if you put on heavy metal or some kind of rock music or loud music, it's like very easy to go like, it's about the music. The music is annoying and it's too loud, which makes it annoying. And that's why I'm in this annoyed state, because I'm getting annoyed with the music. Because it's like we don't have that tendency to actually look inside of ourselves and realize that we're getting annoyed because we were already in an emotional state. It's just that the music kind of brought it out more for us to see.
Yeah.
So it's easy to like use the music as an excuse to kind of hide behind, to kind of not have to really realize that we were already doing it to ourselves on some level.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I would say kind of nicely shows us kind of the problem, that dimension within music is how we tend to perceive or believe or experience that music has the power to influence us in certain ways. For example, like another clear example for me would be how there's this movement of parents or teachers where they blame music and certain lyrics or certain types of music for the behavior of their children, or they believe that some music corrupts the minds of their children, like rap music, to just bring up a cliche. Or, you know, many types of media, it's all basically the same principle, where also this idea of, you know, playing violent video games will cause school shootings.
Yeah.
That idea that that's actually what, so maybe that's also something that is interesting for us to explore, you know, to what extent does music or any other type of medium or media, to what extent does it really influence us, and does it really have the power to influence us? And I think that we already kind of touched on that, you know, like showing how something actually only has the power to influence you when you're already in some kind of emotional state, or, you know, when there's already something within yourself where you're already kind of reacting. So do you have any more perspective to share in relation to this point?
Well, yeah, I mean, for me, like the main thing would be how to then, you know, like the challenging part is how to then make that correction. But it's very helpful, I mean, to even be aware that this is happening, you know, because it's so accepted as just normal, and it's not really looked at how, like, what role we're accepting and allowing music to play in our own personal lives and our own, like, living application. I mean, that shouldn't be the decision of anybody but ourselves. So if you're letting or blaming the music for coming in and like moving you, it's a kind of an abdication of self-responsibility in terms of, you know, like if music can do that, then who's driving your ship, you know, who's in control there?
Yeah.
But it's also cool because it's an opportunity to take that self-responsibility back and become the captain of your own ship again, in that you're identifying, like, okay, if I'm being influenced by this music in this way, that means that this point was already existing in me. Now what am I going to do about it? And for me, like with my experience, I found it very empowering to be able to not go with the feelings and the emotions of the music, but instead to be able to be the one to make my own decision and end up empowering myself further by making corrections.
Cool. Yeah. And in terms of the corrections, I was also earlier looking at, you know, ways in which you would be able to or can use music constructively. Like, you don't have to necessarily go like, oh, this music is just repetitive, or this music is triggering the emotion of sadness, and then kind of try to avoid the music. Because anything that is potentially a problem can also be potentially used as a solution. For example, I used to have a relationship with music where with specific music, I would go into like imaginations where through the imaginations, I would generate a specific experience of excitement. So in a way that, yes, the music was aimed towards kind of accessing that excitement and also fueling it, but I had to realize that I was the one making the decision to generate the excitement through going into certain thinking patterns, certain imaginations, fantasies, through which I would then, generate that excitement even more and really indulge in it. So now every time, like, those kind of patterns still come up. Like, when I hear a specific song that accesses that specific excitement experience, there is still that tendency of that pattern of imaginations to come up and for me to go into that. But now I actually use that specific music to develop my awareness, to develop my resolve, to not go into the kind of self-brainwashing, to not go into the imaginations, to not go into that generating of excitement. Because before I know it, it's like I always end up feeling stuck. That's what always happens. Like every time that I accepted and allowed myself to go into the imaginations, to go into the excitement, it's like I always ended up in this dead end street.
Yeah.
Where I kind of felt the opposite. Like the energy just kind of went into a downhill, and I always ended up feeling even kind of regretful about having gone into that whole cycle. So now I just kind of shortcut it by not allowing myself to go into the thinking pattern to begin with. So the way in which music supports me here is to develop that stance within myself, develop my self-directive principle and power when it comes to my own mind, when it comes to the things that I do and who I am in my own mind.
That's so cool. I had kind of the same thing for me. It was in terms of music and relationships, where I would want, like, the music would instigate certain feelings and emotions in me that in the story of the song, it would be like that's what the woman is feeling in the song. And so I would see that, like, it's been programmed in me through music, through media, through movies, to feel a certain way in relationships and to play a certain role. And it's something that I've seen that's played out in my life, that it's kind of destructive, and it's not constructive at all for me to live my utmost potential in a relationship, in a partnership, where I'm seeking to, like, get these feelings out of this relationship. And it's like, if you're not experiencing this, it's like, you know, not normal or not right, you know. But the thing is that, like, I had to identify that for myself, and then when I see myself just like the same experience as you, I see that these songs making me feel certain ways, and like feeling like a desire, like, yeah, I want to feel like that too, you know. But then I remind myself, like, no, like, I know where that goes when I participate in that. I see how much of myself I end up giving away or suppressing, or just abandoning, that when I chase after these emotions and these feelings that I see when I listen to these type of music. So it would be to practice stopping my participation in those, because then those emotions and feelings also get triggered in real life. So yeah, it's totally a strengthening of one's resolve, because it's like working out at the gym, you know, you're listening to the music and you're practicing stopping, because it's like tempting, you know, like you want to feel that way. And you have to learn how to kind of train yourself and be strong enough to not go after it, and not let it influence you, and not let your desire take over your directive principle, to take that back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like music being the excuse that we very easily use, like not only to blame music if we start feeling annoyed by it, but also use it as an excuse to indulge in certain emotions or thinking patterns. Because, like, as you were explaining that point, I was actually realizing how it's like it all comes down to personal responsibility. Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which music plays, and it doesn't matter what music does or how it influences your emotional state. At the end of the day, you're still the one choosing to go into certain emotions, go into certain patterns. At the end of the day, it's like you're still the one having to live with your actions, having to live with the emotional patterns you go into in relationships. You're still the one making that choice and decision to go into things. But then you've got, like, music and media in general that forms this kind of almost, I would call it, you know, the unified consciousness field. It's like this blanket that seems to be on top of all of us, that we can kind of use as this thing that it's like we use it as an excuse for why we go into certain emotional patterns, why we do certain things, you know, kind of abdicate that responsibility, when actually all that music potentially is or does is just support that which is already there. That's what it actually does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, it's all about self. It's like, do you want to be the one deciding who you are? Or do you want some music executives deciding, you know, how you feel about your relationship, about your life throughout the day, your responsibilities. Who do you really want to be deciding that for you? It's all about yourself in the end.
Yeah, and also even like, it isn't at all about the music itself, like the lyrics or the melodies, because it's easy to like blame that for having influence, but that which is, like I said, like that which is potentially a problem is also potentially a solution. And like specifically, I'm referring to this experience I had recently where I was in the car and this song came on, which I saw was triggering those kind of imaginations that I generally go into. But then I decided to just, no, I'm not going to go into this because I know I'm just going to drift off into my mind. I'm not going to be aware. I'm just going to end up feeling regretful about it. So I'm just going to stay here, and then actually used the feeling experiences that the music was kind of accessing to, rather than allowing it to channel me into the mind experience, I used it to kind of bring up a real excitement, to kind of bring up a life, realistic excitement, which came from me just being here, being grounded, like taking back my power. And then the song kind of went from being problem to being solution. The song kind of became empowering for me because I made that decision within myself to make it so.
Yeah, that's amazing. That is so cool.
Thanks. So, yeah, so music basically only supports that which is already there. Like, which decision are you living? Are you making the decision to, allow yourself to go into energies, feelings, emotions in your mind and give your power away? Or are you making the decision to take your power back, to become a self-empowered individual, to use music constructively?
Yeah, so you get to make that choice every single time you feel influenced or you feel at all moved by music is an opportunity to make that choice.
Yeah, exactly. And that's like an awesome way to look at music in a constructive way, like to not go and, oh, that music is bad because of those lyrics or because of the emotions that it tries to access, but you're actually deliberately using the music to kind of almost gauge where do you stand? Who am I in relation to these emotions and these points? Let it come up. I'm just gonna find out for myself who I am.
Yeah. All right.
I think that we're almost at the end of our hangout. Are there any points that you would like to still bring up as closure?
No, I think we pretty much covered what I had been looking at and beyond, so I'm quite satisfied with the point.
Yeah, me too. Like, we opened it up very nicely and looked at problem, solution, and like went full circle with that. And I'm sure there are many more dimensions of it that we haven't yet discussed, but like maybe sometime in the future we'll do that. Or it's also up to every person watching the hangout to investigate for themselves, like what other kind of dimensions or realities within music and within your relationship to music can you come up with? Can you find out? Like, this hangout is also supposed to like support self-responsibility and self-movement. Like, go out there and find out for yourself.
Yes.
All right, so we'll see you guys next time, and thank you, Kim, for being my co-host. It was a real pleasure for the first try.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right, bye.
Bye.